What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous co-host of this very podcast, the HardwoodKnocks NBA podcast, Mr. Grant Hughes. We have an exciting episode for you today. We are going to provide a screwed score for the NBA's most disappointing teams. Disappointment being defined as relative to their expectations. I'm going to let Grant, though, take you through how we're going to approach it because he came up with a fantastic acronym that we will throw on the screen. However, first, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I want to get right into it, but because I'm so excited that we did come up with a proprietary metric. This is real. We crafted it. You're crediting me, but we collectively came up with an acronym. With a rating, with a score that just happens to be an acronym. Also, I didn't tell you this. I'm doing really well because you know how analog I am, right? And I actually keep like a planner that I physically write on with ink. I finished an ink pen yesterday. I finished it. Do you know what's more satisfying than finishing a whole ink pen, over however many months, Dan? Nothing. Not a single thing.
Well, here's the thing. Did you have other ink pens at the ready? Because then that becomes an inconvenience if you did not.
I had to go find one. Here, I'm holding it up right now. So we've really gone to like an electric blue pen. This is not my favorite kind of pen. I have strong feelings on pens. I'm a ballpoint guy, and I prefer hotel room pens to all other pens. I don't know why.
Well, you know what? I kind of get that because they're going to want to make sure that you could sign for stuff there if you insofar as you still need to sign anything. Yeah. I don't know that I've ever gone to a hotel room in the past half decade and looked for an actual physical pen, to be honest with you. Yeah. But when they open up the HardwoodKnocks Hall of Fame, that is one of the items, the memorabilia that they're going to hang.
Expended pens. Yeah. That's great. So how are you doing? Are you as excited about unveiling our proprietary metric as I am?
I'm excited, and let's unveil it on the screen for people watching. I am a little nervous. Not nervous, but like this is going to be something you and I just have a ton of fun doing, and then it's invariably going to make people mad.
It's okay. That's fine. So, screwed score. As you said, we are discussing teams that have been disappointing, and we're essentially trying to look forward at like how screwed is this team? And within that discussion, we will, we will hit on how many outs do they have? Like how dire are the circumstances? What is the reason that things are not going well? How likely are they to pull out of this? How might that happen? Just sort of like, what's it look like going forward? How screwed are you? And screwed, S.C.R.E.W.E.D, is shit could really end with extensive detonation.
You ruined your own acronym.
What did I say? Realistically, damn it. Sorry. Shit could really realistically end with extensive detonation. I really want to say really. I think that's because it's what we had first and it stuck in my brain.
And you were the one that suggested we sub it out.
But yeah, I know. Well, I was still thinking about the pen, I think. So we will score this from 1 to 10. Coincidentally, we have 10 teams to discuss. A score of 10, a screwed score of 10 is very bad. That's as screwed as you can be. A screwed score of 1, not ideal. But relative to the other teams we'll discuss, that's solid. That's where you'd want to be if you're in this conversation. So you think we should get into it?
Yes, I am. Well, the only other thing I'll add is I don't know how you look at this when you're evaluating, when you're talking about the outs or like even if it comes to doubling down, traveling different directions. I did try to kind of look at this over like a maximum of a 3-year, maybe like further window to where it's like something like if you're really screwed, next season. But like for some of these teams that are more towards the bottom, I was trying to project a little further ahead. And I will say for me personally, that's gotten so much harder because it feels like windows are just more fleeting or even shape shifting. Maybe they're not closing and opening, but they're just taking different forms now faster than ever. And so it makes like it felt like when we were talking about this, it felt like there was a clear top 3 for the most screwed. There was an easy inclusion like to start for the least screwed, but then got everything in between. There could be like real debates and you're going to agonize over like the minutia of it all.
Oh, and last thing, we're not going to, so we cut it off at 10. Some teams that you might think are screwed just because they're really terrible, like they're not going to feature here because for a variety of reasons, one of which being like nobody expected anything out of them. That's part of it. And the other part is like, relatively speaking, they're pretty flexible. Like kind of blank slatey. So like Washington won't be here. Charlotte's not here. Brooklyn's not here. Those are just rebuilders. Like Utah's not here. They have a trillion picks. Like those aren't the types of teams we're talking about being screwed. We're talking about ones that are actually across the board really like further along in the, trying to win process, and things aren't going well. And they're hamstrung by various things that we will get into.
And you could even Charlotte is the spoiler exclusion alert, to where we talked about it a little bit because I expected more out of them. You can excuse some of it because of injuries, but it's very clear that they're just not close. However, if you sat here, if you had told me in September that Charlotte's going to be 14th in the Eastern Conference, that's not something that would have floored me. Now, if I sat here and told you that Philadelphia in April is going to be 13th in the Eastern Conference, that is something that would have absolutely, I mean, I guess you could have said, well, that means things went incredibly wrong,
Yeah.
but because they were positioned like to try and actualize their best case outcome, whereas Charlotte still wasn't. Like if they were supposed to win more games, sure, but it was, oh, maybe they'll compete for a play-in. The Sixers, it's all relative to expectations is basically what I'm getting at.
If you had told your hypothetical self that Philly was 13th in the conference, your other self would have said, sounds like they're screwed.
Yeah, that's exactly what my other self would have said. And you know what I would have also said? Shit could realistically end with extensive detonation then.
So well said.
We begin. Screwed score of 1. I will take it. The Orlando Magic. I think you and I were disappointed that they didn't end up doing more over the offseason in general. Injuries never really gave them a chance this year. They're sitting 8th in the Eastern Conference, below 500. The defense can still be fantastic, but you're still kind of sitting here asking the same questions that you were before they even reached the playoffs last year. And it's okay. For Paolo Banchero was a killer in the playoffs last year. He's been on a better stretch recently. Is he going to be as efficient as you need him to be? And then it's kind of the same question with Franz Wagner. It's like, do these two higher end stars, Wagner was in the onset back of the ballot MVP consideration, but will they ever be hyper efficient or high end efficient drivers of a higher end offense? And it's an open question.
Mm-hmm.
What gives them cover is, 1, there's the injuries. 2, they're still relatively young. 3, I will bang this drum to death. I view this, I know some people view Banchero specifically, feels like he has more skeptics because he's considered a ball stopper. I need to see, and he might favor more inefficient shots. I just want to see him with any sort of functional spacing. The Magic, like their off-ball gravity has never been good around him since he's entered the league. At the same time, though, like they have to be on this list just because they're a disappointment. I will say they're not going to be prohibitively expensive until 2026, 2027. That's not far away. And also, they could be a tax team next year. They probably won't be, but it's okay. Well, if you're trying to stay out of the tax, how do you get better? And so it's worth just considering. No, I don't think they were a blip. They have an excellent base in place, but the path forward for them is not just sort of as choose your own adventure as you might prefer it to be.
Yes, I agree. By far the least screwed team here. They have all their own picks going forward. They've got one coming from Denver this year. They've got a 26 first from, one of those worst stubs from Phoenix or Washington. Like they're in great shape pick wise. It really does just come down to like the build of the roster, like how you don't love the idea of both Banchero and Franz Wagner being iffy 3-point shooters. Paolo's been better lately, but like that complicates things. I do think if you want to be alarmist about it, it's now the personnel is one thing and the injuries are another, but it's like, do you have faith that Jamal Mosley is a good offensive coach? I don't know. Like maybe like everybody makes this comparison, but like he's the Mark Jackson. They need their Steve Kerr eventually. And so like, if you do change coaches, then you run the risk of like, actually it just this, it wasn't him and it is just the build of the team. But Orlando's in very good shape. It's just like there are concerns with like you've anchored yourself to these two guys that may or may not be ideal fits together, and the offense just continues to be a problem. And that's like always a little bit concerning when the same thing is the issue, year after year.
And so now that I have it pulled up, they have never, since Paolo entered the league, the teammate quality around him this season is in the first percentile, Grant, of both 3-point and overall spot up efficiency. And it's never ranked higher than the 41st percentile since he's come into the league. And so I think that sort of, not that it lends merit, but does it make you feel like there's a clear direction to travel, clear fixes to be made here? I think if you were to really be alarmist, would you have to settle on, well, what type of move do they need? Because it takes a belief, a conviction in both Paulo and Franz to say, is this a difference between they need, I'm just throwing names out, a LaMelo Ball, or is
Mhm.
it just go out and get an Anthony Simons and you think that does enough to put them where they need to be or want to be even?
Yeah, and that's why they're not. That's why they rate so low here, which is good, because like you could try one or the other, and the cheaper, less like full commit option might be enough. Especially if you price in like I assume Franz won't shoot under 30% a third year in a row from deep, and I assume Paolo's just going to get harder to guard. Like that seems realistic based on how things have gone.
And the other thing too, they control all their first round picks. They have
Yep.
Denver's pick coming in this year. And there's not, is there a bad contract on the books? Like, does the Suggs injury do anything to change your perception of his extension?
If it is bad, it's for reasons that are like kind of out of the team's control, which would just be, oh my god, he's not gonna. It's gonna be hard for him to like get right physically. But like as a player, he's worth the money they're paying him, assuming he can come back next year 100%.
I will say we love the Anthony Simons for this team. I wonder if they're going to figure out a way. Like, could they get involved in Malik Beasley's free agency this summer? Would be like
Ooh.
another perfect type of acquisition for them.
Hmm.
But this needs to be, you know what? I will up their screwed score over the summer if they do another what they did last offseason, where it was we get someone who doesn't really address our primary issue.
Yes, that would be an issue.
We did not mention this at the top, and I forgot to start it, but we are working with timers. So we're going to do a maximum of 8 minutes or 8 minutes and change per team. I think that's it on the Magic. Are you ready to take us to our next team?
Let's do it. All right, coming in with a screwed score of 2, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're a good team. They're going to be in the playoffs. It may be a play-in situation. Really, tell me if you agree or disagree here. It's like you can only be so screwed if you have Anthony Edwards because he's on the shortest of short lists of young cornerstone type players. This is really just about the financial picture. Like they've already made one trade, moving off Cat for Randall, which just I don't think now you can say was a basketball move. We've litigated this, all season. It's an expensive team. They haven't been as good as they were last year. The offense is just like, it feels like Ant is having to shooting over 40% on super high volume from 3. He's having that's just not the role I think you want him playing. So like he's being kind of suboptimally utilized. He's good enough to make it work. It's really just the money. It's the like they have now, I think officially, or however officially you want to call it, like have changed ownership. That's a variable. Like it's hard to imagine ownership will be worse than Glenn Taylor, but we don't know. So this is still a very low screwed score, but like they just it's hard to avoid the feeling of like there might be another step back, and
Mhm.
and that's not super encouraging.
The two things that I harp on here, well, I guess it's three because they have a lack of asset. You're moving players as your equity at this
Mhm.
point. They can trade one first round pick. It's Detroit's that they own this year. And then from there, you mentioned the new ownership thing. So I actually want to ask you a question about that. Do you think, because we know Mark Luray and Alex Rodriguez were apparently heavily involved in the hiring of Tim Connolly, do you think that means that this won't be a situation where we see new owner syndrome kick in because it feels like they've maybe had more of a significant say? Or do you still kind of view it as that's absolutely a wild card because now they're going to take 80% or 100% of control of the team, whatever it is. And they're absolutely going to come in, maybe especially after all these shenanigans, and try and leave their imprint on the franchise.
Yeah. So I think the fact that they were involved, at least, I don't know, maybe that just offsets the whole, like, he kind of signed he's like on a 1+1, more or less. Like Connolly can just kind of opt out. I wonder if that was something he wanted because, like, well, if Glenn Taylor's back, I don't want to be like, maybe it's that. And then in that case, it's great. We got no issue with new ownership and the top executive, like, not being kind of aligned. I didn't even think about him though as like a potential flight risk, because like what if he looks at the financial situation and the options ahead of the Wolves going forward and is like, I don't think this is it. I want to go, because another team would hire him immediately, right? Like,
Mm.
don't you think he's still probably is someone that's highly regarded enough that he could
Yeah.
get another job? So like, there's that aspect of it. But yeah, I would assume that he and new ownership will not have an issue, and that if he does wind up leaving, it would be because he just maybe he gets a directive that like, hey, we're gonna try to be a little cheaper going forward, and you're gonna have to make another cat for Randall and DiVincenzo kind of deal. But I wouldn't worry too much about that side of it.
Do you think it could manifest maybe in a way where they're applying pressure for him to make more of a where like wouldn't a perfect example be they were one of the teams that there was apparently mutual interest with Kevin Durant. I talked about this with the Athletics S.C.R.E.W.E.D the other day. Uh, just would you give like do they give up too much to get where it's oh yeah we'll give you Nas Reed had opted in or something or opted in we'll give you Nas Reed and Jaden McDaniels and that pick and Rob Dylan. Do you think that there's the potential for that, or if you're keeping the same executive, that winnows down the risk of something like that happening substantially?
I don't know. It's hard for me to think of the package that would be like that's too much for Kevin Durant, based on what they would realistically give up. So yeah, I don't know if I'm concerned about him being pressured to do something like that. I would say actually, and again, this is a low screwed score. I think it benefits them that like there's just no free agent money out there, and they've got several free agents that in other circumstances you'd be like, oh, that guy's gone. But like they might just be able to keep Reed and Nah and just have at reasonable numbers because like Brooklyn isn't going to pay them, and you know what I mean. Like I think there's a real they're in a fortunate situation because of the free agent landscape right now.
Well, that was my other question. And it's so as of right now, if you pencil in Randall and Reed to so Randall's player option is worth 30.9 million and Reed's is 15 million. So like that's about non-taxpayer mid-level money. The Wolves are actually under the first apron with I think it's 14 or 15 players. No Nickeil Alexander Walker though. And so like that's I think it's a source of uncertainty that makes me uncomfortable because Nas Reed, Julius Randle, and Nickeil Alexander Walker can all be free agents, and at least one of them will be. Even if Nas Reed and Julius Randle opt in, will this team pay what it's going to take to keep Nickeil Alexander? It's not like they have a salary you point towards and say, well, then we'll just dump it because we don't want to be in the aprons. You're not just going to give like because Julius Randle's money, if he opts in, is tough to move. On the
Mm,
flip side, Julius Randle's also been your second best offensive player this year, pretty
right.
clearly. What is I guess realistically, I'm asking you, like, what are the odds that all three of these guys are on the roster next year? And if they are, what was the collateral damage of that? Because is it, oh, did
Yeah.
they decide to offload Mike Conley's money at that point? And we know that he's incredibly important when it comes to his passing in the locker room. He's not had as good of a year and he is playing less overall, but like there's just so much. Yeah, we're not talking about their first, like their top guy, but we are talking about, like, I think if you were to ask who's Minnesota's second best player, I don't know what the consensus answer would be, but I think you get four different ones between Rudy
Right.
Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Randall, and Nas Reed, maybe some Dante DiVincenzo sprinkled in there. Probably.
Yeah, I think it's not ideal when Randall, who might, yeah, you're right. A lot of people would say he's certainly the second most important offensive player, and it maybe is their second best player. It's not ideal when you're like, well, if he opted out, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Like that's not a great situation to be in because it just speaks to how like it touches on everything. It touches on like the offense isn't great, the fit's weird. I'm this is me speaking as a very like non-Randall believer. And like maybe that solves some of our problems if he like I don't think he's opting out because I just don't know how he's going to recoup that money. But yeah, that's illustrative of like there's a little screwedness when it's like you could have mixed feelings about your second best offensive player just leaving for nothing. That's not a great situation to be in.
And I think Rudy Gobert getting older. And then
Sure.
I think the other thing, this isn't a bad thing, but you need Rob Dillingham to pan out because that, their screw score is already as low as it could be relative to disappointments, but that's a huge, what they gave up to get him
Right.
and just what this team needs. He is so
Mhm.
critical. And so you need something more. I would say you need more from him next season. Like this isn't, oh, let's check back in year 4 for
Mhm.
where the Wolves want to get. And like they've had this is I've called them, Grant, the national TV Rajon Rondo of basketball teams because they just get up for the big ones.
Yeah.
Like we've seen them hit that pinnacle, but if they're gonna sustain it for more than just like games at a time, they need to hit on Dillingham, and if he doesn't hit next, maybe he still hits, but we have to push the timeline another year for it. I don't know that they're necessarily working with that type of open-ended window
I
necessarily.
agree with that. I still believe in. I think Dillingham's going to be good. I think had he played more this year, we would even have like more ammo to say like he's going to be fine. So yeah,
Most I was going to wrap it up. Most likely of those three players not to be in Minnesota next year.
mm, I don't know. Is it Reed? Like just because he
I
might
think
be the guy that most teams go after?
I feel like it's just
Okay,
because Randall, if he opts in, you're not just going to wash off that money, and then
right.
Reed will opt out. Maybe you don't, because if he opts out, you have to pay Reed, and he's going to command a type of money that I think other teams can't offer.
Yeah.
But no, it's just, well, if he gets the non-taxpayer mid-level from someone, that might be too, and that'll also be and we're out of time. That will be sort of the index of, well, how financially motivated was the actual
Mhm.
Julius Randle deal? Because if it's just they're trying to, it's one thing between like trying to stay out the second apron, but if they're just cutting costs like relative to their tax bill, that's a red flag.
Yep.
Our next team with a screw score of 3, the Memphis Grizzlies, who I, I guess in terms of their record, they could still technically win. Can they still win 50 games? Yeah, they would have to go 6-5, 6-1 the rest of the way because they've played 75 games. I just I hit their under, and I think they're going to clear it. But when you look at the way that Taylor Jenkins left, along with Nate LaRoche, and now they have um, Tomas Islo in there, I don't know what this organization is necessarily thinking. The John Morant noise, yes, we know it's speculation at this point, but like if you don't go deep in the playoffs this year, you have to wonder, well, how far can Ja carry this offense? We're worried about his availability issues. As we're recording this, he just hit a game winner over Khalil Pigeon. Where
I will never call you a pigeon, Dan. I had to look up like what's that mean?
I had to too, and I feel ashamed because it's a basketball. It's like in the basketball vernacular, and I had
Well,
no idea
it's
about
also
it.
big in hockey. Apparently, my
Is it?
Google search revealed to me.
Pigeon's also pretty big in New York City as well.
Sure.
It means bird. So
Oh,
so their screwed score can't get too high because they have all their own picks. They're deep. They have a bunch of interesting players, all of whom are, unless you think that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to turn down an extension, they're just under contract. But the concern starts to kick in where it's not just, is John Morant good enough to be the best player on a contender? Is the big three of John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. good enough to reach that level? And how do you go about getting what you still need, which I think is still a more dynamic half court offensive player, preferably in the form of the wing, preferably who is certainly going to shoot threes. And I'm asking all these questions about their offense, Grant, because I don't trust it in the playoffs. It's their defense that is just absolutely imploded. And that ups when you're dealing with the type of exit that you did with Taylor Jenkins, coupled with what we know happened over the offseason where they gutted his coaching staff and
yeah.
put these assistants in place, it makes you wonder whether this team, we said this when he got fired, does this team have their shit together? And if they get bounced in the first round, like they're a team, I don't know which team I would pick as, the postseason is going to inform what they do this offseason more than any other squad. Like that might be Houston just because
Mhm.
they're playing around with all those assets and young players. It could be Memphis.
Yeah. Have you seen this is the most interesting one of the more interesting elements of the whole Memphis situation to me, where I forget who's posted it. It's been discussed several times about like where John Morant ranks in points per play as a pick and roll ball handler just over his career. And essentially like the summation is like not high. Like he's not good as a pick and roll ball handler. And the much of the reporting, in the wake of the Taylor Jenkins firing was that like Ja didn't really like this new offense that involved the fewest ball screens since tracking was a thing. And he wanted to get back to more pick and roll stuff. And so does it strike you as potentially an issue when your main on ball guy wants to play a certain way and isn't good at it and doesn't like to play other way? Like, maybe that's just one of a half dozen issues you'd want to flag in a season where the team kind of quit on defense and the coaching situation got all messed up and they've just not traded well, generally speaking. Like they get, what was the like decision tree from, we always talk about this, like what it costs to get Marcus Smart and what you've netted from him. Like the Morant wanting to be a pick and roll guy and being bad at it, like you just file that in there. But that's like that could be like a reason that this whole thing doesn't work. If you just have a guy that like is misjudging what his best qualities are, and like and you don't get the best out of him when you're not letting him play that suboptimal way, like that's just a thorny like potential path to screweddom to me.
We need an acronym for screweddom. Yeah.
That's too
But
hard.
I would agree with you, and also what I would say is the way that they had him playing, maybe it's not what he wants to do now, but that style, I mean, I'm not even saying it was the right one. That would have prolonged his career,
It
or
made
at least
sense.
yeah, it made it more likely that he could be a star later into his career than he is right now, because so much of what he does, I think he's a very cerebral playmaker. I want to make
Mhm.
it clear. But this is just like, this is Derrick Rose. This is Russell. What, like, you need to figure out ways if your athleticism is going to wane as you get older. And this is not, he's not been an Iron Man like Russell Westbrook has been. Like, he's closer to the Derrick Rose end of the spectrum, I would think, at
Mhm.
this point of his career. And so I understand when you're younger that it's what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young, because you're
Yeah.
not going to have that necessary foresight. But, like, that's where it kind of hurts you here, and I think let's even operate under the premise that, okay, this is fine. Their path to getting better than this, noticeably better, I don't I don't see it in the sense of this is what they can do, because you
Mhm.
look at it and say, okay, you've maxed out John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, those guys are not, so you need to believe in Jalen Wells or Zach Edey or Gigi Jackson. Like, so there is some upside on that. And then you say, well, then they have their own picks. They can, except for this year, they
And
can
they've
go make,
drafted well. Like that's one thing, they've drafted really well for several years. That's why they're not that screwed. Is because they, like you said, they've got their picks and they tend to, get a pretty good bang for buck on them.
but if you want to go, you need to believe, I think, if you want to remove them, make them even low. Because by the way, we don't, this a screwed score of 3 out of 10 is not that high.
Mm.
But if you want to move them lower, it's, they don't, you have to believe in their ability to make a move, which, as you already mentioned, the front office hasn't, it's either hasn't traded well or has been reluctant to make trades, looking at them missing out on Dorian Finney-Smith. But now you have to go about and say, does Dorian Finney-Smith, I don't know that he was exactly what they needed, but does that type of player elevate them to the tier they want to be in? And if he doesn't, you have to start looking at more expensive guys, and it gets a lot harder to acquire those guys, because you don't have, like, you have these like nice small contracts on your books, but Brandon Clark is going to be their fourth highest paid player next season at $12.5 million. Then you have John Conchar at fifth at 6.2 as of right now. That could go up depending on who they add. That's like 18 million. So what can you take back with that and attach that? Who's the best player you're getting? If you wanted to
Mm.
get involved on a Kevin Durant or just a bigger name, someone that becomes available, you're going to have to cobble together a ton of contracts, or
Yeah.
then that leads us back to, well, are you knifing into your big three?
And then like fundamentally, it is the like, would you, other than Morant missing time and not looking so good until recently, like I think their best three players, like Jackson is playing like as well as you could realistically ever ask him to play. Like it's possible this is as good as he ever is, and that's not a knock because he's awesome right
I would
now.
say he could foul less, but I think at this point
That's
that's,
just priced in. Like
yeah.
that's doing. And like Bane, I guess could be a little bit, but like what I'm getting at is like these three guys are like it's kind of now. Like this is especially if you think Morant is not going to age well because the athleticism and the already like pretty pervasive durability stuff. Also, next finger guns is probably going to be a suspension. He just got fined for a
Did
second
you also
offense.
see that he will not be allowed outside at recess for an entire week? I'm sorry. Did you ever
We
just
almost made it through without talking about it. Oh, we were so
did you
close.
did you ever stop? Do you ever have those moments where you stop and realize just how stupid our job is? Because there was a $75,000 fine, and then finger guns is in like
I
the
know.
release too. Like,
Well,
this is what we do for a living.
so let's talk about it. How much time's on the timer? Do we have?
You have 28 seconds.
Okay. I think like it's kind of dumb because it's pretty harmless, but it's like read the room, man. Like you can't just be smarter about it. And like
This
if
is
you throw up a middle finger to the other bench, you're getting fined. Or if you like bounce the ball over your head, it's a tech. Like we know the rules. Just follow the rules. Like it's I know they're stupid and arbitrary, and it feels like paternalistic, but like just fall in line on
and
this one.
you're not fighting some higher power in a
Right.
profound. This is Draymond complaining that he doesn't
Yeah.
get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to flagrant calls. It's like, yeah, no shit,
Right.
Sherlock.
Every job's got dumb rules. Just follow the dumb rules.
Well, we're out of time, but you don't get to elaborate. I really wanted to ask this question: who gets more in a trade this summer if they were to be moved, John Moran or Trae Young?
Oh man. I think I'm gonna say Trey. How about that?
I'm going to say that too, even though he's less time on his contract. But I think it's Trae. I think it should be Trae. I would personally, if I was running a team, give up more for
Me
Trae.
too.
Who are we on to next, Grant?
We are on to, with a screwed score of 4, the New Orleans Pelicans. This is the range where it started to get tricky for us. We're gonna split some hairs. There's gonna be some differences of opinion. It's essentially, there's the Zion of it all is where it starts, right? Like, it's just, you are tethered. We've talked about this plenty. You're tethered to this guy that you don't know if you can rely on him to stay healthy and stay in shape. Recent indications are like looking pretty good on that front, but we've been down that road before. I do think the reason now, in a lot of situations, this would be a higher score, but there's the protections priced in of the weight and sort of like body fat and weight combo guarantees or non-guarantees, where worst case scenario, you can just get off of this contract if you need to. Like, that's not in the discussion at this point because he looked very good. But there's that aspect of it. You've got the McCollum contract. There's just, I mean, how long until we already have been discussing like Willie Green might be someone that is on the hot seat if you're putting together those kind of rankings, the small market of it. It's like, it's quietly been like a long time since this team sort of fashioned itself around Zion, and the results overall have not been good. And you just sort of get to an end point, with before where you reach like, we got to do something different. Still a pretty low score, relatively speaking, but like, you can't deny that. First of all, this season was a massive disappointment, and injuries were the main driver of that. But like, how many years are we going to, say, well, we're not going to have any health issues anymore? Like, it just keeps happening.
And they're different. I mean, Minnesota probably doesn't have a ton of outs, but referencing the teams we talked about before them. But like, this is kind of the territory where it's okay. There's still a bunch of different avenues that New Orleans can travel down, and it helps that, okay, you mentioned the contract protections. If you ever get one season of 70 games of Zion, you might just have a top 10 NBA player on your roster.
You're going to have a top 10 offense, that's for
Right.
sure. Like,
And I think, look, the DeJounte Murray Achilles injury, that potentially submarines next season. But again, the McCollum contract, that'll be expiring. You have Trey Murphy still. It'd be nice if he played in 65 games, which he's only done once in his career. And you do have, I think they have more picks than people kind of understand, because like the 2027 pick that they're sending to Atlanta as part of the DeJounte Murray trade, it's going to be the less favorable between their own and Milwaukee. So maybe you're giving up a good pick, depending on what Milwaukee's like then. But you could, if you need to, is what I'm saying. Like, you can just pivot into a full-on rebuild. You could take this year's high-end lottery pick, trade Zion, and just move forward if that's what you want to do, not having to worry about sending out your draft pick elsewhere. But you also just have enough draft equity to where you start attaching first rounders to CJ McCollum's expiring contract. What kind of conversations do those get you in? And just to have, like, they found Yves Missi, who's been really good this year. I still wish he did some of like the more traditional big man stuff on defense better. I've been really impressed with the way, from what we saw before Zion was shut down, was just like, oh, those two are learning to play together
right.
too. And so like, you have him, Trey Murphy, and then I guess a lot could be determined by where they land in this year's lottery. But unless they just tumble down, they're going to have a top 4, top 5 pick. Like, who are they going to take that's going to make you feel worse about their team?
Yeah, that's the thing. The upside is really there for this team. Like, I mean, I like Jordan Hawkins. Like, I think there still might be something there as like a 7th or 8th guy that adds a dimension they really need. Now, it's eventually got to happen. And like, it's only been 2 years, but it's like, I think we were kind of banging the Jordan Hawkins drum like for this year. Yeah, a lot of talent. The Murray thing, I'm glad you mentioned it. I should have maybe even led with the Murray thing, how much of a bummer that is, both just like for him personally, and then for the makeup of the team. And then the financial stuff is he's going to make, 31 next year and 33 the year after that. And he's got a player option after that, which if things are going this way with his health, like he might pick that up in 27, 28. If anything, I would move them to a lower screwed score. I wouldn't move them up, because as we move forward, we are going to get into some pretty pretty severely screwed situations.
I will say relative to the field, I don't really think you'd want to move them up over any of the teams we're gonna
No.
talk about, but something that should also be caked in, this is not an organization that's been they've made moves, but it's always felt like, if not half measures, like three-quarter like, the DeJounte Murray's a perfect example. I liked the deal. That was like a 75% measure. That wasn't the all-in play, and
Yeah.
we know they're never gonna pay the tax, and so they
Mhm.
have I think they're $15 million beneath the tax next year. And it's like, all right, well, a lot of that's gonna be taken up as of right now with their first round pick. What are they willing to do thereafter?
Right.
Are they gonna try and get better, or is it, well, we don't know when Murray's gonna come back. We don't know what to so I think that's I think the uncertainty is the basis of that. Like, even more so than the Murray injury. Yeah, sure, that matters, but that's more part of the macro uncertainty here, to where it's point to anyone on this roster that you just, oh, I know what they're gonna be and do next season and how much they're gonna play, and you can't.
Yeah.
You have anything else on them?
No, no.
So we will restart the clock and get to our screwed score of 5 out of 10 with the Philadelphia 76ers. This, I think, is going to be a controversial one because Joel Embiid, he's having the arthroscopic procedure on his knee, right? That was just announced.
Yep.
And I don't know if you watched the doctor video where I can't even remember his name, but he does these YouTube videos. He responds to like the latest sports injuries. He's not treating Embiid, but he mentioned like this type of procedure, I'm just going to expect Embiid to feel better, but he's just going to continue to deal with problems. And so, shocker, Embiid's health is a red flag.
Yeah.
They have another 4 years and $248.1 million of Joel Embiid on the books. The Paul George contract, you signed that knowing the out years are going to be iffy. You didn't sign it thinking, okay, well, the front year was bad. And so is it just one of the worst deals in the league? 3 years, $162 million left on it. I understand that their worst case outcome is maybe worse than like the Pelicans' worst case outcome, but that's why they're behind the Sixers. It's worse. It's not as bad as Philly's, but like Philly's best case outcome right now, they might get a top 6 pick in this year's draft. And let's just say they don't. Let's play the pessimist role here. You still have Tyrese Maxey. You found Jared McCain, and it's not like his injury is going to be career altering. You've kind of unearthed Adem Bona. I just compared him to Robert Williams III, but with Mitchell Robinson's passing, which is to say it does not exist, like the passing. You found him. You found a Justin Edwards. You've shown that like maybe you could look at where Maxey was drafted. Look where McCain was drafted. Look at where you got like how you got Adem Bona, Justin Edwards. Like you have found players here. Quentin Grimes, like mining value there. You could still be expensive, but you also have some assets in the clip. Like, yeah, you owe that pick to Brooklyn after the if the OKC one conveys. There's still outs here. And even if Joel Embiid never plays again, you're going to be hamstrung, but you still just have different avenues to explore. And because they're, of anyone we're going to talk about on this list, I think you can make the case that their highest range outcome, as likely as it might be, is better than anyone
Yep.
else. Like Minnesota, right? We got to throw them in there. So I think that's why they kind of belong in the middle, because there's clearly a level of high screwed-dom here,
Mhm.
but it's
Mhm.
not, I don't think it's, people have kind of painted it as doom and gloom, and I don't think we're quite there yet.
I think that's right. I think the downside you could argue is as bad as almost any. There's the top couple teams is like they're gonna hit the downside, and so like that's we're talking hypothetically with the Sixers, but there is a scenario where you could make the case that Philly has the 2 worst contracts in the league. If Paul George is this injured and ineffective going forward, and Embiid is never healthy, like that's brutal. But like you said, you extinguish that obligation to OKC. You have the Brooklyn one, but even the Brooklyn picks that you're owing are what top protected 1 through 8 in 27, 1 through 8 in 28, and then it becomes a second in 28 if not conveyed. So like you can still tank, right? Like that's still in play. We will get to situations where tanking will not help you, and that's when you're getting much higher in the screwed score. So I agree. Like the upside is there, the downside is there. Like, but look, you still have Tyrese Maxey. They've Jared McCain was a major find in the draft. Like, hopefully, if he's fully healthy, that's just another like high end rotation guy that is young and cost controlled and all that good stuff. Like, it's not quite like I like to think of it in terms of like what outs do you have? Like the Sixers, they don't have all the outs because like if the contracts of George and Embiid look terrible, you're just not getting off those without paying some of the stuff you don't want to give up to do it. So that's a like their outs are fewer, They're not non-existent though, because you can benefit from tanking if you gotta, and that all like the upside being like, if what if Embiid is 80% of MVP Embiid and he can play 60 games, like you're a
Right.
top four team in the East. Like that, I think that's just not something you could say about a lot of these other teams. This was one of the hardest ones for me, but I think we landed about right, just smack in the middle, acknowledging the two like extreme poles of it.
How do you think the draft lottery has the potential to change this? Because if they don't get their pick would be one, but let's say they get their pick, does that almost make the decision-making process harder because it's, well, should we be looking to move this player
Right.
to get immediate help? Can we fit whoever we draft and develop them in a way? And it's okay, well, we have like just three not huge guards on the roster and Maxey, McCain, and Grimes now. It almost feels like not that they would get decision fatigue, but just like the uncertainty as to what direction they should even like the push and pull of that feels like that's actually what matters. People just point to their cap sheet, how much money they owe Embiid and George. Sure. But it's kind of the push and pull of like, well, how do we juggle all of this to like how aggressive are we over the offseason? Do we just let it ride? It feels like that might be more of a determining factor than anything else.
Yeah, that's a big one. I was just thinking too, like clearly they're acting as they want to pick in the top six. Like they want to keep the pick this year.
Oh,
That's how
would you
that's how
claim
they're playing.
how do you know that? How do you know that that's what they want?
Well, I don't know if you've been keeping up, Dan, but like there's a lot of names that aren't household variety that have been playing for the Sixers. But like, is that what if you got these obligations extinguished sooner? Like, would that is there any? Clearly, they decided that's not the way to go. But if you're trying to avoid being fully screwed, might it be better to just convey that pick this year? I'm just asking. I think I agree with what they did, but we haven't really discussed like what about the alternative of like what if it's 7, it goes to the Thunder, and then you're on to the Brooklyn thing, which I think it's at least 2 years after. So I guess you're talking 27.
I th
Um,
so this is interesting if you talk it's like kind of a similar dilemma with Miami. You're not set up to like, they're not gonna tank again. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, they'll have the ability to do it, but, like, you tank this year because it's that window of opportunity
mhm.
because you shouldn't be like, if Tyrese Maxey is healthier, you're not this bad this year. Like,
Sure. Yeah, they didn't really have a choice, but like,
yeah.
yeah, you're right.
So it's like you had to keep this year's pick, and if you wanted to convey it, fine, then you should have been more competitive there. But I don't view
Mhm.
it as like a missed opportunity next year because you need to, unless you're planning on stripping everything down, which that
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it's an option.
They can't.
And if it is an option, you know why it's probably an option because they won the lottery, and kept their pick,
Yeah.
and they decided that's the direction they want to go.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us to our screwed score of 6?
Yeah, we've got the Heat here, which again, I'm going to talk up the reasons they may not be super screwed. Good market, historically competitive franchise, great coach, Bam Adebayo, down year, but still someone you definitely like. Got all the playoff bona fides. Is just like a really great player to be. Maybe can't be the best player on a team that wins a bunch of playoff rounds, but he's close. Um, they just they've got similar draft obligations that there's a scenario where they just won't be able to benefit from like the normal rebuild tanking stuff that you could, because I'm going to get it here. So their first goes to OKC with top 14 protection. And where are we on that? Is that going? I can't even remember.
So they have to make the playoffs, which we don't know if they're going to do yet because they're in the play-in.
Yeah.
So if they don't make it out of the play-in, that pick is not going to convey.
Okay. And then you've also got your Charlotte obligations, which could make it so bottoming out is just not super helpful. I, or do we have them? I think we talked about it. I think this is right. And it's just because like the way forward just seems tricky. Like it's hard for them to, unless you really think Tyler Hero has another level to go, and that Ware is only going up. Ware is no longer going to be a pigeon going into next year and beyond. I'm going to start calling people pigeons like a lot. I hope there's not like some Urban Dictionary definition I don't know
They're,
about.
they're actually
That's like
so there
really
is.
horrible.
Let me educate you on some pop culture,
Okay.
Grant. So, do you remember the song "No Scrubs"?
Sure.
Hat tip to a listener who I now remember the song, but they pointed it out, or a follower, one of my followers on Blue Sky pointed out that there was a response called "pigeons," no pigeons, which so I guess it could be a derogatory term to describe
Oh,
females,
I
and so,
see.
but "No Scrubs" was more popular, so I feel like we don't have to give pigeon like the credence as just sort of some type of sexualized term, but it is out there as like an urban
Okay.
slang as a pigeon. So be careful who you're calling a pigeon.
Got it. It is it is a funny thing to call someone though. I do enjoy it. I feel
I
like
just
it's
want to. So if you like scoot past someone at the supermarket with flair, like maybe you
uh-huh.
call them the pigeon. Like, oh, got it, made it to the checkout line first.
Yeah, 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 definitely that. Or like, I think I would use it. This is the thing. It feels like because of the research we both did, it feels pretty sports specific. So other than it's like someone that's just unskilled or like hangs around the basket and like benefits from other people is like a like scavenging a little bit. Just like as birds go, pigeons not high on the list. It's just like kind of calling someone lame, I guess. But yeah, if Ware is not that going forward, or if John Morant will just lay off and like leave him alone, he's a rookie. What do you want? You're gonna beat him in an ISO.
What's Khalil
Congratulations.
Ware do to you? Damn.
Yeah. um, yeah. So talk me up a little more on like why they're so screwed because like it's not an optimal situation, but it's like it can't. Again, we're getting close to like okay, real problems. Miami's not quite there.
I think I can simplify it this way. They're the Sixers without the upside
Okay.
because they're more financially flexible. They're not slated to have cap space before 2026. So it's not happening this summer.
Mhm.
But like after Trey Rozier's deal comes off the books, Tyler Hero have 1 year left on his deal. I don't think they have any bad money. You could say the Sixers have some bad money, but so we're just assuming in 2026, one, that free agency is going to be cool again. Two, so they don't need Andrew Wiggins. They can just let him go. They're not planning on paying more money for Jaime Jaquez or Nikola Jovic by that point. So
Mhm.
like there's okay, like you might have kept. What are you going to do with it? And so you don't have any extra assets. And so if you convey your pick, let's say they convey their pick this year, you still owe that pick to Charlotte in 2027 with top 2 protection. So if you wanted to tank, you could do so for 1 year. But if you
Mhm.
wanted to go through the 1 year tanking route, it should have been this one because then you say, all right, we're going to be back at it next year. We owe the unprotected pick to OKC. And now that pick to Charlotte's also unprotected. I think it makes sense for them to convey and get it out of the way just because, like, try to do it at least because you don't want that. But then again, it's like Charlotte's is only top 2 protected.
Right.
So I don't know what the right answer would have been, but you don't have all these extra trade assets. They've been mentioned as a Kevin Durant team. I know the Suns are going to work with Kevin Durant on where he wants to go. So I think you can reasonably assume that there might be better offers out there than the one they ultimately accept. But if you're Kevin Durant, you're looking at the Heat. Why do you want to go there aside from living in Miami right now when you're looking at the roster? And then two, if it comes down to like who has the best or comparable offers, it's not going to be this
Right.
team.
Yeah. I think to get into the is it extensive detonation or is the E and the D of screwed? Like if the Heat are in a position where they are tanking for just that 1 year, I would assume it also means you've traded Bam, right? Like because you're gonna keep an in prime Bam on a tanking team. Like so I would say like the screwed potential, it could sort of be self-inflicted because if you're gonna go that route, it's not just okay gap year, it's more of like a harder reset. I would think because although like even that's hard because the next year after that little window you're going to owe that pick again,
Right.
so like it
Well,
would
can you
have to be a
trade Bam
really
to Charlotte to get that pick back
ah
and other stuff? There you go.
you've cracked it, that's what it is.
But and so it comes back to what you were focusing on. The outs here don't feel like very extensive to use the
Right.
word that's in screwed, but like our acronym because like okay, they can't tank or rebuild readily. Sure.
Mhm.
Can they get better readily? That's like and where is you already mentioned like Hero, Bam, they've probably both topped out.
Mhm.
Where's the upside? It's Khalil Ware and that like do you think that Jaime Jaquez this season been like at some points Eric Spoelstra just doesn't think he exists
Mhm.
apparently. That's like quite
Yeah.
the turn. So yeah, it's for me, it's just the lack of optionality to where they almost just have to hope they get lucky on the trade market, I think. And that's just when's the last time they actually got lucky on the trade market? Is it the Jimmy Butler trade?
I mean, and that was just like right, yeah, that was because it was well, that's how the Heat always, over the last decade plus just position themselves to like when the Jimmy Butler comes available or like going way back when there's going to be a massive free agent class, they're like ready for it. That's just the free agent class thing might not happen under this CBA like ever again. And then you just can't count on the disgruntled superstar that wants to go to a certain place, like working his way loose. That's not, that's not always going to be there.
And by the way, if they end up with Kevin Durant, I'm curious. Okay, so the soonest first round pick you could trade as of right now, is 2029. What have you given up to get Kevin Durant? Would be my question.
Yeah.
Our next team with I think we've only gone over on one or two teams here with a screw score of 7. I think this one's going to be pretty controversial, and we're obviously master clickbaiters here, which is why we put them there. But this comes down to me. I think if you look at their situation, they've got, the swap that, the pick that they owe to Atlanta, like they could keep it if they want. It's top 12 protected this year, might land there. Next year, I think it shrinks to, top 10. If you really want to keep it, you could game it to keep it. You did get the 2030 first rounder of Minnesota, right, in the De'Aaron Fox trade. The Spurs 2027 first round pick, probably whatever with Wembanyama. But like, my point is, you have those assets. You have Keegan Murray. Domantas Sabonis is under contract. You have talented players on this team. I will say even after trading De'Aaron Fox, there's no logical reason for them to have, I shouldn't say there's no logical reason. They shouldn't be this high on the screwed scale. This organization has the most incompetent decision makers, and it starts and maybe even ends with ownership and Vivek Ranadive. The fact that Vlade Divac is like linked to this organization again is just flat out malpractice. And the other thing here is, take him out of the equation. I know some people have taken the stance that they did well in the De'Aaron Fox trade, quote unquote, under the circumstances. You helped forge those circumstances to where you probably could have gotten more, or at least had less pressure on you. And like in a vacuum, you should have gotten more, like or I should say, you should have went a different direction. And that's what also gives me major cause for pause here is, even if Sabonis, we know that's the other part of the screwedness here. They've tried to recreate, like they want to be Chicago Bulls West, apparently. And Sabonis, I do think, is better than Vooch, but he might not want to be in Sacramento anymore. And if they have to move Domantas Sabonis, do you think that's going to be the wake-up call to go through a rebuild? No, because we just saw it in the De'Aaron Fox trade, and you don't get to say, well, he only wanted to go to the Spurs. Like, no, like you could have prioritized more. And I don't also want to hear, and like you got Zach LaVine, so if you remove him, that's like 2 first-round picks. If Zach LaVine was going to get you, I think Zach LaVine has become underrated. Let me be clear. If Zach LaVine was going to get 2 first-round picks, the Chicago Bulls would have traded him for 2 first-round picks. So I have zero faith in the people in charge, beginning with Vivek. I don't even know how much control Monty McNair has at this. Like, who's the one calling the shots anymore?
Well, all the reporting is that like Wes Wilcox was the guy that was on the phone. Like, and that part of the reason he was there was because they're like, I don't know if we want Monty doing that part of the role. So like, it's just. Sorry, you can finish. I just have a couple things.
Like, that's a red flag in itself. So I'm pretty much done. It's just, you can't, even if they should be set up to not be totally screwed, do you trust like this organization to, like, they're gonna get lemons and just make a pile of dog shit somehow? Like, that's their trajectory of the Kings' decision-making tree.
It's just at some point, like, okay, if you had predicted the Kings had a high screwed score every year for the last 20, you'd have been wrong twice, like once. So like, let's just check the track record on that one. And the constant is ownership. It's not like Ranadive is responsible for, the late 2000s, even the beginning of the 2010s, but this is, it's ownership. Like, I don't even think we need to go much beyond that to say that the Kings are screwed, because it's so clear that like, you can't create a culture or a level of organizational stability that creates success on the floor sustainably. You might have a blip, which they did. And 2, look at the guys that they've alienated most recently. De'Aaron Fox, not a malcontent, like go along to get along guy, like just good dude. Domantas Sabonis works his ass off, like plays hurt, good dude. And these are the 2 guys now that your organizational like fuckery has alienated. Like, what happens if you just get like a normal NBA player there that is a star that's like not so tolerant for so long like these guys have been? Like it's going to be the revolving door of Zach LaVine's and DeMar DeRozan's for eternity until ownership changes or until ownership just empowers a couple smart people and gets all the extra voices out of the room, and there's a clarity of direction and everybody understands what the org chart looks like, which nobody does right now based on all the reporting. Like you just like, your hands are tied behind your back, like until the principal issue of how ownership is running. Also, by the way, the Kings have a great arena and a great fan base,
Oh
and
yeah.
like a lot of the business stuff has been awesome. So like credit
Underrated
the organ,
market in general. If you're a player, Sacramento's in California. Yeah.
credit, I guess, credit Ranadive for fostering, like for doing well in those regards. But the basketball side of it, it's just like, how many times are we going to run up against this wall? Like it's insane to
That
me
they built.
that you saw what Levine and DeRozan did in the weaker conference, and we're like, let's do that. That sounds like a great way to like. It's just ownership is the biggest disadvantage here, and until that changes, whether it's a new owner, which I don't think it's ever going to happen, or empowering someone else to just be in charge of all this stuff, you're screwed forever. Like that's just what it is.
And look, it's problematic because something you said about like ownership getting out of the way. I don't know that I would argue that this should be their aspiration, but it's a problem if you can even think about their aspirational, like their most aspirational scenario is this ownership regime, like following the blueprint of whiny nepo baby fuckboy James Dolan, of him
Yeah.
getting out of the way in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like, you don't like, yeah, okay, the Knicks are run kind of like a real franchise now, and I credit that to just and there's even
Well,
questions
look who they
still.
put in charge. Look,
Right,
like they got real competent people.
but it's just, you don't ever want to aspire to like be
Right,
like
yeah.
James Dolan trajectory of things. So yeah, and that's just, and but to look at the product on the court, I mean, like even the handling of Mike Brown, like the
Mhm.
firing of Mike Brown, you need to figure out the coaching stuff now and hit on that. But let's just look at the personnel. What coach is coming in and making these Kings more than number 6 in the West? And I think, how do you even get to better than that? It's, does Keegan Murray turn into a superstar, which by the way, you're not set up for him to, because he's always going to be marginalized on offense
Right.
by having all these other ball handlers in front of him. And it's, you could go out and make a trade, but it's, you need the guy who can define your entire championship stock at this point, because I like Domas Sabonis more than you, although you give him some pretty high praise now. Aggregators, get that out there. But they don't have like who should be the number one. You were trying to kind of offset it by saying Domas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox are kind of second best player on title guys, and we have 2 of them, and that's how you approximate it. Okay, fine. You don't have like Zach LaVine and DeMar, like that's not approximating it in the same way.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what we could put them higher, but that's not really in the spirit of the exercise, because it's like they just have one problem, and it's a fundamental one. But like the next teams we'll talk about have a lot of problems.
And I will say, another harbinger of just how poorly the Kings are set up, I guess, is it felt like we just talked about them for 15 minutes and it's been less than 8 and a
Wow.
half. So we move on under the time limit. Do you want to take us to our screwed score of number 8?
Yeah, so we've got the Bucks here at number 8. I don't know how, there's not a lot of like new information to impart. Like this has just been kind of the scenario. Start with, they've made several win now trades, like what, sending out a bunch of picks for Drew Holiday, using Holiday and picks to get Damian Lillard. Brooke Lopez is inexplicably still very effective at his age, and he's just fundamental to what they do. They may lose him, he may decline immediately. Like the window for him is pretty short. They've swapped out Middleton for Kuzma. That's been, I don't know, saved them some money, but it's just not helping the bottom line. And you have still, Giannis is going to finish 3rd or 4th in MVP, and you just like seem to be just losing hope, So if and when he asks out, then that's the detonation we're talking about. It's just, there aren't a lot of like flexibility options, pathways for the Bucks to get better. And that's a huge problem when you have a player as good as Giannis playing as well as he is right now, and having had him more than once over the years, like as nicely as you can, and always in the off season, talk about like, I'm committed here, but we need to be making decisions that allow us to win. And just putting sort of some conditional language on his loyalty, which like, that's not a knock. That's just if you're him, you have to be thinking that way. So this is a good team that doesn't have a great ceiling, I don't think. Um, that's independent of Dame's injury or his deep vein thrombosis affecting what happens in this postseason. But like, this is a team that's been bounced early a couple times. Granted, injuries played a role, changed coaches a couple times. Like, it's all just trending towards the blow up. It's just it's a win, right? It's not an if. Like, that's how this ends at some point.
Yeah, they've been able to, I won't even say pull rabbits out of their hat because they gave up like real stuff, like giving up
Yeah.
Drew Holiday to get Damian Lillard, not an easy call. Even making the Drew Holiday trade for a team in that market, I think, with
Hmm.
Drew Holiday, like, okay, how long will he be here? The Giannis, he did sign the extension, but at the time it wasn't guaranteed. Those were risks. You just kind of run out of how do they make that next move. And what's complicated still, we did talk about this previously following the initial diagnosis of Dame's DVT. So as of right now, you look at this team for next year and they're about 15 million outside of the tax. But Brooke, or excuse me, 23 million outside of the tax for next year. That's without Brooke Lopez on the books. And even if you bring back Brooke Lopez, my guess is he eats up most or all of that room underneath the luxury tax. And then from there, it's two rotation players or free agents that you do not have bird rights on, and Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince. Do you just think, like, do Ryan Rollins and AJ Green replace them? Like, kind of next guy, like, positionally, no. Like Taurean Prince, that would be Kyle Kuzma's job more so.
Hmm.
And I think, Zach Lowe went on the Bill Simmons pod, and welcome back, Zach Lowe. I can't tell you how much I miss the Lowe posts. Shout out to HardwoodKnocks for getting me through. I hope that served as a proxy for a lot of other people. But he had said something like he doesn't even feel Giannis as much this year, even though the numbers are, and I just kind of patently disagree with that. I don't disagree with him often, maybe
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, but I'm kind of just watching, like, ever since the Dame injury, he's running the offense, not just in transition, but like from the dead stops, and it's kind of working. So having Giannis still be Giannis, I think gives me maybe more hope than this screwed score would say. But it's going to come back to your words, the outs or the maneuverability. What is it? You can trade one first round pick this summer. The contracts are the contracts. And you're also, we mentioned the tax base. What happens if Bobby Portis? I don't think he's going to decline his player option at this point. But if he does, like, you're not going to get Brooke Lopez and Bobby Portis back for $35 million combined. I would think it probably costs more. Then maybe I'm wrong there. Who knows? Or you could just lose Bobby Portis and you're kind of in the situation you're in right now. I'm with you that it's a matter of if not when. If I told you, though, that Giannis is not, like, his future is not going to be an issue this summer, he's not going to approach it and wondering if he should ask for a trade, would this lower their screwed score for you at all? Or is this, you're kind of looking at this thing is going to come to a head by 2027, which is how, by the way, I do view it.
I agree with you. I think like I said, I think it's a when, not an if. And like, I'm trying to think of the analogy. It's not quite like, oh, the boat has sprung a lot of leaks over the years and you are running out of fingers, or like to plug them, or like, it's almost just like, yeah, I just can't get there. So this was a terrible line of thinking to go down, but it's just like, you talked about it. They've made the hard decision. They've made the future mortgaging decisions at every turn to try to, like, they got to, and you know what? They won a title. So like, to some extent, it's like mission accomplished. It's hard to stay that good in that market. And they've tried really hard. And that's why they are where they are, where it's like, they can trade the one pick, like you said, guys like Bobby Portis, who are good players, but like, there's no scenario where Bobby Portis should be this important and you should be thinking like, we can't replace him like that, that's where they are, where it's like, if Taurean Prince leaves, like who was kicking the door down for Taurean Prince, like so like, and he matters. And that's just what happens when you keep doing the short-term thing because you owe it to your superstar. And I'm not even saying it's the wrong decision. I think, like, unlike a lot of teams, generally speaking, you could quibble with the coach stuff, I guess, but maybe
You
not.
should. I'm sorry, but not putting, and I know that was probably the plan with Terry Stotts, not having a more offensively innovative coach
Sure.
with Dame Giannis, but like that I
Yeah.
consider that a farce.
But would you agree they're distinct from some of the other, certainly the next two teams we'll talk about, where it's like you made mistakes, and that's why you're in this position. The Bucks, like, at almost every turn, like, yeah, I get even the Dame thing. It's like, I get it. That's justifiable. You needed someone to finish games offensively, and like Holiday's not that guy. And you're looking to, you know what I mean? Like, this is just what happens when you win a title and you just like keep pushing and keep trying to stay there, and you just pay that toll. Eventually, you run out of, you can't pay anymore. Like, you're just in this position where the only way to go is like a pretty significant reset.
Yeah, and I mean, I likened this when I was this is like we did talk about the Bucks with S. I sort of liken it to what happened to the Thunder after they were younger, of course, but after they made the finals. Think about how, like, it really comes back to injuries for me. Is
Mm.
think about how many postseasons were ruined by, like, it was everyone was Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, Russell Westbrook. It seemed like they were all taking turns being hurt during the playoffs. And for Milwaukee, it's been, if you think something's going to happen this offseason, there's a chance that we might not see Damian Lillard or Giannis Antetokounmpo play in a single playoff game together. Isn't
Right.
that wild? I know it's only
Yeah.
2 years, but that's a really big deal because that is the entire just like point
That was
of
the
this
goal.
team. And what do you do? Like, what is the true litmus test for this team over the offseason? Is it, do you look at Brook Lopez's free agency as, if he's shopping around or if he leaves, like that could be just the nail in the, because how are you supposed to, we're talking about maybe Torian Prince stays and like Gary Trent Jr., like the shooting could probably at least be replaced with AJ Green. You can't replace Brook Lopez. I don't even think, if you threw, like, could you get Al Horford for the non-taxpayer mid-level exception if that's now available to you? And it's just, Al Horford's great. He's not the same level of just like the rim protector that, bro. He's better on the perimeter, sure. But so that's the trend. That's the player, I guess, that I'm watching more than anyone. He's a free agent, and it's okay. It doesn't just matter if he comes back. It matters the number at which he comes back for, because that'll kind of define maybe what they could do. And I mean, even if he comes back, are they even going to be willing at this point to they could trade their 2031 or 2032 first round pick, knowing what we're just saying. Are you going to even put either of those on the table in trade discussions?
I mean, the thing is, like, I'm not a Bucks fan, so I can say this, but I imagine every Bucks fan would disagree, and I would not begrudge them for it. Like, the best thing that could happen for the Bucks, like mid and long term future, is for Giannis to say like, "Hey, it's time. You got to trade me," because then like he is your out, right? Like, he's the way that you replenish your picks, the way that you hit the reset, like. Because again, like, if Lopez leaves or stays, like if he leaves, like, you probably just lose him for nothing. But like, they don't really have anybody else with like massively or even like, I don't know, debatably positive trade value. Certainly no one that's going to give you back stuff that makes it so like, all right, 2028 or so, like, here we go again. We're on the rise again. Like, I just, and if I'm a Bucks fan, I think I just want Giannis to stay there forever. But like, I just don't know what kind of team you can build around him. They've just run out. They've run out of ways to do it.
Unless you think his trade value is going to crater over the next year, or you think that you can get a good amount of value for Damian Lillard now, I almost think it's better off to hope it defers for a year, just to kind of ride out. Okay, we're not sending out a crappy pick next year. Maybe we hit lightning in a bottle, and because it's the East, aside from Boston and Cleveland right now, if the
Sure.
Bucks are fully healthy, yeah, you're going to pick the Knicks or the Pacers over them in a series. Not outside the realm of possibility, though, that they could win.
Yeah.
We were out of time on the Bucks, though. We went over a little bit on them. Screwed score of 9. This was nominated by you. I did initially had them in that 8 spot. You argued to bump them up, so maybe I'll throw it to you here. But this goes beyond. I mean, the Luka Doncic trade certainly matters. And by the way, to harken back to the Kings, they're lucky that the Dumont exists right now, because they would, like, Ron Adive would be in the running for worst owner in the league if whatever's going on in Dallas wasn't happening.
Right. So with now the track record isn't as long, but boy, are there some hits on it already for ownership in Dallas as far as to what you're talking about. So there's that threshold issue of like, oh God, is ownership just like wildly incompetent? And if ownership is not, are they empowering an executive in Nico Harrison that is just like, man, can we trust him to make a deal? We could until the Luka deal, and then now that just makes you doubt everything. But then we're talking about things that are in their control. Out of their control, Kyrie Irving tore his ACL. That's catastrophic to a team that I don't even know what to say about the professed timeline and how these players make more sense in it than Luka did. But if you're talking a 3 to 4 year window, Irving at his age tearing his ACL, probably losing all of next year, coming back as what? Like a good starter? I'm sorry, like just as like given his age, given what happens with that injury, like is he an all-star again? I don't know. But he's like fun. He's critical to the whole
Yep.
thing. Like, so you have that. You have Anthony Davis, who has looked good when he's played. Durability is like, I don't think durability concerns are going to go away the older he gets. So there's that. The pick situation, not good. They have none incoming. What can they trade? So they owe 27. They owe 28. They
So
don't control.
they control this year's first round pick and next year's first round pick, and then they do not control the fate of their own first round pick again until 2031.
Right. Yeah. 20, 27, 28, 20. Okay. So not like, but here's the thing. If, okay, cool. Oh, they can tank the next 2 years and there'll be like upside there. You just got Anthony Davis because you're trying to win now. Like, how does that? Like,
And you can't tank this season. It's too late.
it's just wait. Yeah. And yeah, right. You're competing somehow. You're still in the playing mix, but that's got less to do with how good you are and that more to do with how bad the rest of the West is. Like, this is another situation where is the way out trading Anthony Davis? Like, coldly, yeah, that is your out. But man, does that scream like, okay, nobody has any idea what they're doing.
Right.
If that's the move that saves you. So I don't know. I'm sure I missed some things, but just I don't know how you can be optimistic about anything with the Mavs short term right now.
No, I mean, and look, it almost increases the likelihood. Okay, you can say, okay, they're deep at full strength. Think about what the defense will look like if and when Derek Lively and Anthony Davis play together. Okay, great. But like next season's at least a little bit compromised because of the Irving injury, as you mentioned. And now it's, well, they probably still have enough. Like you look at the salaries on their books, they do own some picks. Again, this year's 2026, they have that Lakers pick now in 2027. They not 2029 though. Couldn't get that one in the Luka Doncic trade for some reason. So like, yeah, okay, you could put together the package, but doesn't that make it more likely they indulge a borderline reckless move? Like I would argue Kevin Durant on this team would be fun. They could get to the money. You've bought yourself he's going to be 37 in September. He's still spectacular, but like you're trying to talk about like the next 3 years, that doesn't seem very long. But if you're adding Kevin Durant, like Kyrie Irving on an ACL injury, Durant age 37, 3 years. So
Yeah.
you're right. I don't know. It's not that this team, I'll say it's not that they don't have outs, and you could argue the extent of those outs because of where their picks are going. It's not like, again, this isn't convenient. Like with Phoenix, you look at Houston, it's like we get control of 3 of our first round picks back if we wanted to, or assuming up to 3, I should say. You don't have that opportunity, but it's like you sort of alluded to, they have outs. We just don't believe that they're willing to explore them. Like they seem more likely to chase good money after bad now because of the Luka Doncic trade. And but that's what they were doing unprompted, was throwing good money after bad. So why would you ever, it's sort of an analog for the Kings where we don't trust ownership.
Right.
We don't trust ownership or the front office to make the right decisions here. I could see them being a little less screwed than Milwaukee just because their best player right now, neither of their 2 best players are going to go to them and ask for out over the summer. I wouldn't think, unless you believe Anthony Davis might. Like if that's a possibility in Milwaukee, I could see a scenario in which Dame and or Giannis go to them. Like, and if one asks for out, the other is going to probably ask for out too.
Yeah.
So that would be my argument to have Milwaukee over them. But I also trust Milwaukee's decision-making process at this point way more than Dallas's.
Yeah, it's just the top thing. If it's not it's ownership and then it's management, and they're very much related. But it's like, yeah, if you zoomed all the way out and you pretended that nobody had any stakes in the current roster, you would trade Anthony Davis the first second you could, because that's the only way you I think, or at least if you're really trying to like reset things, that's what you do. And that's like, it's hard for me to imagine that happening.
I stand corrected, by the way. They got the 2029 first round pick from the Lakers, not the 2027. So that's probably,
everybody knew what you meant.
That's more valuable, I guess, than 2027. But also, it's tough to build those distant first round picks as like the entire kit and caboodle. And it's not like, unless you're trading Derek Lively, where's the blue chip upside trade asset on this team?
I don't see one.
This next one, Grant, screwed score of 10. Would you say it's arguable, or what?
I'd love to hear the argument against it. Phoenix Suns screwed score 10, maxed out the screwed score, the screwed meter. It's just,
they're an 11 actually.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what we should have done. We should have jumped right from 9 to 11. It just like put a graphic up there of like a broken thermometer, like shooting out the top, or like the needle just like pinging against the red line. I think I would start again. This has kind of been the through line, I guess, of all but Milwaukee here in the most screwed teams. I mean, ownership is saying we like who wants to see who I'm paraphrasing now, who wants to see us act rationally and acknowledge the rules and restrictions that govern every team in the league. Like who wants that? Fans don't want that. I mean, I don't want to speak for all fans, but I think fans want to believe that their team is being run like competently and like
Sure.
in a way that acknowledges like how smart teams are built and like that there are rules here to be adhered to and penalties, God knows, like that are in place to keep you from doing dumb stuff. And just so Phoenix, just to me, feels like the team most disconnected from reality. And that puts them like farthest away from competency. That said, there is no debate. Phoenix does have outs, like specifically with Houston. You go get your picks back. If that costs you Devin Booker, if that costs you Kevin Durant, whatever. If you trade one, you're almost definitely trading both. So like you could see a scenario where the Suns get their picks back, get other picks, and then are like, oh, okay, well, they're just kind of a middling team on the way up now that the draft assets have been like somewhat replenished. What about the way this team has been run so far leads you to believe that that's like even a discussion right now? That's the thing. Like whatever outs there are, just ownership is saying we're not interested. So I don't know where to go from there. Like we could just talk about the financial complications. We could talk about how the core guys don't fit together. We could talk about being like anchored to Bradley Beal because you kept the no trade clause and he's in charge still. But it's the main thing is the main thing, which is that ownership has acted like beyond rashly from the jump and continues to seem like that's the plan.
Yeah, and I think if you told me they were you shouldn't trust them to do this. I know they proactively shopped Kevin Durant with Devin Booker specifically, and he recently talked about how you're never going to get the same love as from the franchise that drafts. But if he wants to be there, that's up to him. But organizationally speaking, I think it would make more sense to whether he wants to be there or not. Moving him would be what's in the best interest of the future of your franchise. They're not, even though we see them proactively moving Kevin Durant, it doesn't seem like they would be the instigators of a Devin Booker trade. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to diminish the trust factor. And then the out could be, okay, you're trading Kevin Durant. You're not going to get all your picks back if Houston's getting involved. And what is the way in which you trade Kevin Durant and at least remain or have a better year next year than you did this season? Like, what is the return on, even let's say you win the trade or get a good return for him, which, by the way, that's not a given because this team has not won a single trade since Matt Ishbia took over, except for the Royce O'Neal one ended up being good. But like even the Grayson Allen one has been a little whatever when you kind of trace that back to everything in his season and the extension they give him. So why do we trust that they're going to get like this great return for Kevin Durant? And even if they do, like picks are like, I would be shocked if they got the level of picks that then allow them to turn around and trade for someone who does optimize a win now window. And I'm certainly going to be surprised if they get a player instead of the picks, like just out of the Kevin Durant trade off rip. I just don't like even the teams that are being mentioned as the ones that had mutual interest. I guess Houston's the best one, but how deep into their war chest are they going to like dig for a 37-year-old, soon to be 37-year-old Kevin Durant? I know him and Ime Udoka are tight. I think Rockets fans underestimate, and we'll see who's right, who's wrong. I think they underestimate how much the offense is going to struggle in a playoff setting. Durant fixes a lot of that, but like that's a 2-year. You make that move for the next 2 years, if that. Like it's a year-by-year thing. That's what makes this even tough. Is if you kind of throw the front office of it all and Matt Ishbia out of the equation, even if the Suns wanted to act like a proper organization, you could actually make the case that what if Jalen Green kills it, or the Rockets in general kill in the conference finals, and they're not giving you back all your picks to get Devin Booker? That's
the whole thing. It's like, okay, the Suns, Devin Booker asked to be traded. I want to go to Houston or not, but let's just to make it as favorable, I don't know, realistic as possible. So the Suns and Houston are going to transact and Devin Booker is going to be involved. I still think Houston can just take the hardest line imaginable because like, all right, so either you accept a pick package from us involving your own picks. That's like not going to be all of them, or we walk away. You're stuck with Devin Booker, who now is like asked to be traded. You got to go send him somewhere else that doesn't get you your own picks. But like, you just even if it's a Booker to Houston deal, the Suns are going to have like zero leverage because the Rockets know we got the thing you need. Like, you need this if you're going to have a lifeline to respectability at some point in the next decade. Like, what we're going to drive the hardest bargain you can imagine. And because like, what are you going to do as the Suns if the price is like, we'll give you a 1 first and matching salary for Devin Booker, it'll be yours. You're first. And it's like the Suns just have to. I mean, usually teams aren't that unreasonable, but like Houston could just turn the screws so hard. And so like, even if you're doing the thing we're saying you should do, Suns, you've positioned yourself in a way that's like, you're just going to get pennies on the dollar for what you should have been able to do in a trade.
And then you could go through the other teams that aren't Houston that were on that list where it's like, well, what is Miami giving you that's going to make you feel good about your team immediately? What is New York? Like, are you that interested in Karl-Anthony Towns? What is the team that's semi-interesting would be, I guess Golden State, if it was like a Jimmy Butler for KD swap, perhaps. And then if you could get, I think there's really only one scenario where if you're Phoenix, that maybe you could feel a little bit better about yourself relative to this season. Not even your screwed factor is still probably pretty high. But if you traded Kevin Durant and you got Jaden McDaniels and then one of Naz Reid or Rudy Gobert, I think that would set you up to be interesting next year for sure. Now, how interesting? I don't know. But the bigger question would be, is Minnesota giving up 2 of those guys to get Kevin Durant? I would probably say no, but I honestly don't know.
It's hard to say. Yeah. They don't have, that's why they have the highest screwed scores. It's really hard to concoct scenarios where it's like the Suns come out the other side and it doesn't feel like they're still going to be in like deep trouble through 2030.
There's one scenario. I wouldn't forget about, I mean, this year's pick, if it ends up being like really high in the lottery, should they miss the play-in and not make it out. But like, it's getting a couple of the more distant picks back. Like if you get the 2, what does Houston have? 27 and 29 in addition to this year, I think the control, whatever it is. So. Like, would you argue that's bigger, or is that even more problematic? Because it's like, well, why are we doing this now if we're like, there are still going to be like gaps in when we own our own first round picks? Right. Because you could say I think the one saving grace would be what we think they're not going to do is, can you get all your picks back from Houston for Devin Booker? But like, even that is sort of, all right.
And if you're Houston too, don't you think like Devin Booker's a really good player? Is he it's top 15, top 20, probably? Like, I think there's a lot of other guys that you could target. Like Phoenix needs to transact with Houston. Houston does not have to transact with Phoenix. Like, it doesn't have to be Booker for the Rockets, but like the Suns got to deal with Houston. So it's just like, it's such an inequitable negotiating situation.
And but to the Suns, it has to be like imminently palatable. So, okay, let's say you trade Devin Booker, and even if you get this year's first round pick back, which is slated to be like, what, 10th or something, now all of a sudden you have no Devin Booker, not your own first round pick next year. The soonest you could get would be 27 after that. I could see them being like, well, even if he has an ass round, we want to be proactive. Why wouldn't we just wait another year?
Yeah,
they're the most screwed. I think it's incontestable. Like, does Dallas or Milwaukee have a case over them?
No, it's got to be Phoenix.
We did it. That was our screwed score rankings. And what does screwed stand for, Grant?
Oh, you don't even have the graphic up. Shit could realistically end with extensive detonation. Did I get it?
Got it. Yes. Remember that, the screwed score. It will return, I think. Yeah. We need to make this. We enjoyed it, so hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
I'm all for acronyms. I think we should go forward with any set of rankings or things like that we come up with needs an acronym.
Are you ready to take us out of here, sir?
Thank you. Yes, Dan, I am. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Like, these are debatable rankings to say the least.
According to this is your latest proprietary metric.
You're right. It's been vetted by several scientists and engineers. So, argue with them, I guess. But, leave a comment anyway. It helps the algorithm. Join our Discord. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. I think that's going to cover it. Shouts to Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.